Hello everyone. Dr. Shaina Saib, would like to continue the lecture, which was the third lecture of mine, where I had started discussing about the social policy goals in the post-independence phase. And in that, I had just started talking about education policies. So, in continuation of my previous lecture, I would now further move ahead with how the national policies on education from it's initiated in 1986, and then 68, then 86, and then the revised policy in 1992 was there. The first, as we know, that the first policy was in 68, and then the next policy on education was in 1986, and then again it was revised in 1992. And 1986, it marked a turning point in education system, and it looked into the disparities in education, and it set goals. It started prioritizing universalization, vocationalization, and improvement in higher education. The important features of 1986, which was again revised in 1992, the National Education Policy. uh, it talked about universalization of elementary education, that is providing free and compulsory education up to the age of 14. Navodaya Vidyalayas were established. Operation Blackboard was initiated to talk about the physical infrastructure, to improve the physical infrastructure, teaching facilities in schools, vocationalization of education, encouraging the inclusion of vocational subjects as secondary and at the secondary and higher levels. Then empowerment of women, emphasizing education for girls, enhancing the enrollment ratio, especially though the girls coming from rural and backward areas. Then there was district institutes of education training were established to train teachers and to improve the teaching methods. Then again, this was the policies was revised, it was modified, because policies are more flexible, and they are time to time they are being revised, they reviewed and modified in order to accommodate the existing changes in the society. So 1992 reinforced many of the original goals, but it started focusing more on decentralization, participatory planning, and the role of private sector partnerships. Then the Sarva Siksha Abhiyan in 2001 was initiated, which was launched to universalize elementary education and ensure children would get education up to the age of 14 years. That is 6 to 14 years, at least the basic elementary and primary education would be given to them. So, the Sarva Siksha Abhiyan focused on improving the infrastructure, teacher quality, and student retention. It also addressed the social and economic insecurities or equity issues, education for girls, scheduled caste, and scheduled tribes, and it introduced school meal program to encourage attendance. In order to, the midday meal scheme was initiated in order to encourage enrollment ratio, as well as to strengthen their nutritional content, nutritional intake of the girl child. So SSA, Sarva Siksha Abhiyan had significantly contributed the enrollment ratio in elementary education, also reducing, out of school children. So the dropout ratio was being, there was a decline in dropout ratio through Sarva Siksha Abhiyan. Then RTE Act 2009 came into force, which was again made a fundamental right through this act. Although DPSP had Article 45 had stated that the state is obliged, it is endeavored to provide free and compulsory education, but with the Right to Education Act 2009, it was made a fundamental right for children from the age 6 to 14 to have free and compulsory education. Now, when you talk about that, the state must ensure that all children in this age group, that is 6 to 14 years, they are in school and not out of school. And there had been no detention policies. Children should not be held back up till grade 5. none of the child would be expelled until the completion of their elementary schooling. Infrastructure development, quality enhancement, quality standards should be maintained. Schools should adhere to certain norms, regulations. Uh, there should be an availability of qualified teachers with proper infrastructure facilities within given. In fact, there was under the RTE Act, there was also reservation in the private schools, that is 25% reservation for children from economically weaker sections. Which should be admitted in such private schools. This law was a landmark, although initially a lot of efforts had been taken in strengthening the education system of our country. But this law had led to a near universal enrollment in primary education. And although there had been a lot of challenges in terms of teacher quality and learning outcome, nevertheless, the education, the literacy rate, or enhanced educational status of our country also was educational status of our country increased, was enhanced. Then we talk about the Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan 2009, which focused on expanding access to secondary education, improving its quality. It strengthened secondary education infrastructure, classroom, laboratories, sanitation facilities, focusing on reducing gender school gaps in secondary education, promotion of vocational education to align secondary education with employment opportunities. It helped increase enrollment in secondary education, and also it persisted, it posed a challenge. There had been challenges in the dropout rates and quality of education. Then midday meal scheme was expanded which was initiated in 1995. It was expanded in 2001, aimed at enhancing enrollment, retention, and attendance in schools by providing free meals to students by improving their nutritional level. The scheme has been highly successful in reducing hunger as well as malnutrition among the school going children, and improving their nutritional educational outcomes as well as their nutritional intake, especially in the rural areas, in the rural and poor areas. Then there is National Skill Development Mission, which was initiated in 2015, aimed at creating a skilled workforce by promoting skill development among youth, aligning education with employment opportunities. It was the key aspect of this was to bring about, to initiate, or to establish skill training centers and promotion of vocational courses and vocational avenues. Then there was also a private public partnership to improve industry level relevant skill development, and this has led to employability as well as entrepreneurship, focusing on both school dropouts and higher education. Then there is National Education Policy of 2020, which is a transformational policy and aimed at overhauling India's educational system, promoting holistic, flexible, multidisciplinary education and skill development. If you look into the important features of NEP 2020, it is about the universalization of early childhood care education. The schooling system has been changed. Focus on foundational literacy and numeracy, where it targets that every child attain literacy and numeracy by the grade 3. Multilingualism, emphasizing mother tongue or local language as a medium of instruction up to grade 5. Then it is also talking about that what curriculum revamp, the whole curriculum structure needs to reviewed, needs to be modified, focusing on reducing rote learning, introducing critical thinking, creative skills, and a more flexible curriculum would be initiated. Higher education reforms also was there, which aims to increase gross enrollment ratio in higher education by 50% by 2035, allowing multiple, for multiple entry and exit points in the degree programs, and establishing a single regulatory body for all higher institutions. Then vocational education was also given weightage under NEP 2020. NEP 2020 is expected to modernize the education system, make it more inclusive and aligned with the global standards. Then again, another initiative was taken up by the government was the Digital India initiatives in education. Like such platforms had been initiated. I am fortunate that I am also part of such platform Swayam, a platform offering massive open online courses to provide free learning opportunities to the student. Diksha, which is again a digital infrastructure for teachers, and then e-Pathshala. All these digitally advanced initiative have been taken up in order to ensure that every child, every student gets maximum knowledge from various throughout anywhere from any part of the country. When you talk about the employment and public works, during the phase, again, if I go back, because this is a broader goal I had been discussing, and what measures and what steps had been taken in order to look into these employment and public works. The inability to generate employment opportunities, thus improving their aggregate productivity of labor in an economy. It was just in few chosen sectors, as I already said, in the post independence phase, there had been a failure in terms of economic development, uh, along with the persistent widespread of absolute poverty and slow rate of improvement in human development indicators. This was just not a problem of welfare, but it also represent a huge waste of human resources, which had been crucial in building the economy, and suggesting that the Indian growth and the economic growth could had been much more faster and equitable if enormous labor reserves had been productively utilized and productively balanced. One of the major disappointments of the neoliberal adjustment strategy in India in 1990s was the inadequate generation of employment opportunities. In this period, the rate of employment generation was below, but the rate of growth of output and the increase in the labor force was much more. If you talk about what had been done, because during the independence phase, there was limited scope of employment. Industries were not established. Agricultural was still a dominant primary sector for economic growth and prosperity. However, during the 5-year plans, emphasis was given to accelerate economic growth and development by strengthening the secondary as well as the tertiary sector. The secondary sector was establishment of factories, industries, whether it was jute, cotton, fertilizers, or any such industrial setup was being initiated. It was being accelerated, and also it started focusing in the later part. It started focusing the tertiary sector, that was the service sector, tourism, hotel management, and to strengthen the economy of a nation. India's policies on, if you talk about the current status, employment generation in public works since independence until date, what initiatives had been taken in order, what policy prescriptions, and how how the issue of unemployment, or suppose there was disguised employment also in the agricultural sector. If you talk about the agriculture, if you talk about the economy from the agricultural sector, there was disguised employment, underemployment, and apart from the seasonal variations, there had been underemployment also. So India's policies on employment and public works had been designed in such a manner to address the dual objective of creating employment opportunities, at the same time building infrastructure, especially rural areas, where unemployment and underemployment would be taken into considerations. The government had been making efforts and primarily focusing on generating livelihood opportunities, enhancing skill, and providing a safety net for the vulnerable populations. Like if in this line, first I'd first talk about the Manrega Act, which is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act in 2005. And Manrega is a flagship program. In fact, it's a social welfare scheme. It also it also talks about a policy prescription which aims at providing, guaranteed wage employment to rural households, and it is one of the largest public works programs in the world. In fact, if you talk about the key aspects of Manrega, it provides at least 100 days of wage employment per financial year to every rural household that demands work. It focuses on creation of durable assets, like roads, irrigation, canals, ponds, and water conservation structure, improving the rural infrastructure. Thereby, it focuses on improving rural infrastructure. Wages are paid based on the work done, and payments are made through direct bank transfers to reduce delays or any kind of corruption. So, this was one of the best part of Manrega, that the wages were being directly paid to the beneficiaries without any hustle, without any obstacle. And then the work must be provided within 15 days of work request. The workers are entitled to unemployment allowances. So Manrega has tremendously reduced rural poverty. It provided a safety net during times of crisis, during times of agrarian distress, and it has also empowered women who make up a significant portion of its workforce. As I mentioned earlier, that in agricultural sector it was very prominent that the women had been invisible workforce. They had been contributing in the labor activities, they had been constantly there in the agricultural pursuits, but they had never been counted as a contributor in the economy. So in fact, the disguised employment has been very much prevalent in the rural sector. So the scheme had played a very significant role in boosting local infrastructure and in improving the water management and land productivity. The next is the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. The primary objective, it is a skill development initiative, and it aims at providing people with industry relevant skills to improve their employability. And it focuses on training modules, certification for millions of youth. It includes a wide range of sectors like construction, healthcare, hospitality, agriculture, and manufacturing. And participants, they receive financial rewards as well, and a government recognized certificate upon successful completion of the training. Then we have the scheme has particularly aimed at creating a skill full workforce which would meet the demands of the various industries, reducing unemployment, underemployment, and also to contribute to country's economic growth. Then we have the National Urban Livelihood Mission, which aims to reduce poverty, vulnerability among the urban poor by providing them access to skill development and self-employment opportunities, as well as to initiate or to cover the social security measures. It through NULM, it provides skill training to the urban poor. It facilitates credit facilities to encourage entrepreneurship. It create viable opportunities for vendors to have accessibility to institutional credit and provide shelters and basic services for the homeless. It also works for self-help groups to promote collective efforts for economic growth and development, and it also focuses on microfinance institutions. It helped many individuals. NULM had it had helped many individuals in urban areas, improving their livelihood, escaping poverty through skill based or self-employment opportunities. Then Skill India Mission, another object, another scheme, another welfare measure, or I would say policy matter, was to equip uh, India with basic skills, in giving Indian youth a platform where they would acquire, they would imbibe skills which could be more market relevant, and with a certification by 2022. And a comprehensive program was initiated, like PMKVY, National Skill Development Mission, and others, to ensure and enhance the entrepreneurial skills and to align with the current needs and demands of the market or industrial setup. It also provided opportunities for reskilling, for upskilling, as well as in various sectors like construction, manufacturing, and the tertiary sectors and other service sector. This mission has led strides in addressing the skill gap in India and providing employment opportunities to a larger workforce. So they can also by both in traditional as well as emerging sectors. Then we have the rural infrastructure development through public works. In addition to employment schemes, India's public work programs focusing on creating vital rural infrastructure such as Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, irrigation and water conservation, the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, as well as affordable housing under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Next in line has been the next in line in order to, if you talk about employment opportunities, Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana, which was launched in 2020 to incentivize the creation of new employment opportunities, restoring lost jobs during the pandemic. The government contributes the employer as well as make contribution to both the employer as well as employee, to employ in the employees provident fund, for new recruitment and for new hiring in the establishment or in the sectors. It focuses on formalizing employment by encouraging business to register workers under the EPF scheme, and it helped in reducing unemployment caused during the pandemic, and it supported business and MNCs to initiate hiring and hiring of new employees during this economic crisis in order to strengthen the economic growth. Then we have Pradhan Mantri Employment Generation Program, which aims at generating self-employment opportunities by providing financial assistance. It's like building or the entrepreneurship amongst the youth, amongst the so-called individuals, so that they would establish micro enterprises in the rural as well as in the urban areas. It provides subsidies on loans to individuals and small groups, self-help groups or cooperatives or microfinance institutions were being established, were manufacturing unit and service or trading business. Through this, the emphasis was placed on, as I mentioned earlier, that was about encouraging entrepreneurship and promoting small-scale industries. The scheme has further supported, many first-time entrepreneurs, especially in rural areas, and it has helped in reducing the urban divide, the urban-rural divide, by encouraging economic activities in less developed areas. I would like to stop here, and today's lecture is over. I'll continue in the next lecture, that is the fifth lecture. Thank you, everyone.